diagnosed with MS in 1995 at the age of 30. And I had just founded an internet company, continued to work in that line of work, and then the disease was relapsing remitting, so it was rather violent episodes that would leave me blind or otherwise incapacitated. And I started Copaxone as soon as that became available from the FDA in about 1998. Before that, I'd just been doing lots of IV steroids. And it settled down a little bit after that. The relapses weren't happening every 6 months like they had been, but it was still very difficult to work and continue in my job as the CEO of that company. And by 2002, I had become secondary progressive, and my neurologist told me that I now needed to switch to, that the Copaxone wasn't working anymore, and that I needed to try a harsher therapy, the Novantrone chemotherapy that had recently been approved for MS. So she told me I really had no other options, that I could forget about having children because it changes your DNA, and I felt like I had no options, so I went ahead and tried that. I only made it for a year of the 2-year therapy program on that because it decreased my heart function, and I was simply getting much worse. I started using a cane during that time, and by 2003 it was obvious that I couldn't function anymore at work, and I ended up on disability and unable to work anymore. Things were looking so bleak, we kind of felt, my husband and I, like maybe I wasn't even going to make it. And we moved back to my home state. We left Seattle and moved back to my home state of Texas, where I had family. My motorized wheelchair my power chair was on order because I couldn't walk anymore, and I was falling constantly, and there was no other option. In kind of desperation, I took one more look on the internet and typed in futilely MS cure because I knew there was no cure, but I ended up talking to other people in a discussion group that were using something they called LDN, low-dose naltrexone. And it sounded too good to be true, but I started researching it, and it took me a couple months to research it because it sounded, it wasn't FDA approved for MS and very experimental, but I researched it and started it in February of 2004. I responded the first night I took it. Not everybody does, but in my case, it was the first night I'd been able to sleep 8 hours straight without my legs twitching and without having to get up to go to the bathroom 6 times. My husband was so worried about me sleeping quietly that he put a mirror under my nose because he hadn't seen this in years. Anyway, I responded very well to it, and within 4 weeks I wasn't using my cane anymore, and I had still been on Avonex at that point, and I continued it for 2 more months while I was taking the LDN, but it became so apparent I was getting better on the LDN, I just quit the Avonex as well, and I haven't been on any ABC drugs or the official MS drugs since then. It's just been LDN for the last 4 years. I did a website to try and compile information and research and help other people that were trying to learn about it, ldners.org. And I worked with other people that were, compiling information, doing research. Dr. Yash Agrawal, corresponded with him quite a bit, and he ended up writing a hypothesis about how it worked, and that kind of got the research ball rolling. I did a little of my own research where I compiled online surveys of people that were using LDN for MS, and then luckily Dr. Skip took over that, so I was like, I'm going to let the pros handle this now, but it was early on, and it was nice because our results actually correlated each other, and then we ended up together at the first LDN conference in 2005, where I went over my results and he went over our results, and that was really neat to see from 2 totally independent sources very similar information. And so this is now the 2nd LDN conference I've been to, and we went to the first one in New York City, 2005, and it's really exciting to be at this one because now there's many more researchers here, medical professionals, PhDs, people that are either planning trials or involved in trials, reporting on their clinical practice experience, and it's really rewarding to see this. And then also to have worked with other LDN patients like Vicki Finlayson in the fundraising effort that Skip's Pharmacy helped out with. Well, it was something that Dr. Agrawal and I had discussed along with Art Mellor of the Accelerated Cure Project. and we formed a fundraising committee, and there we decided to set up a committee and just start raising money. We had no target, nobody that was going to do the research, but we figured, Dr. Agarwal told us, well, if you raise the funds, they will find you. So we started doing that, and it was slow at first because we were just doing it via the internet, a plea out to other patients like myself that had recovered, donate whatever you can. And Dr. Bahari authorized our efforts, and he donated money, Dr. Gluck donated money, we all did to kind of seed it. And then from there, it was just patients sending in whatever they could. So I had collected maybe $7,500, and then Vicki Finlayson found me and said, well, I'm going to put on a big fundraiser in California, in Sacramento, where she lived. So Doug and I went down there, my husband and I, and she had this great big shindig, and she raised the majority of the funds for it. We came up to about $25,000 by then. And there was someone at that event, a patient from the University of California at San Francisco, which is one of the biggest MS research centers in the country. And he had an appointment with Dr. Cree, his neurologist, following the week that he had been to the fundraiser. And he was talking with Dr. Cree about this, and Cree said, well, I see some interest here, and I have interest in this because I'm seeing some effects, and I want to do a study. And he says, well, I know somebody that's got some money that wants to donate to a study. So next thing I know, that patient hooked me up with Dr. Cree, and I took it to the fundraising committee, and we evaluated it, and there were no other options really. We didn't have anybody else that had a protocol put together, and University of California was ready to go. And they were doing just a small trial because, with a budget of $50,000, but he said that if we had half the money for it, he could get the rest together. And he is now out at the annual neurology conference announcing it in April, and then at the MS World Conference, and to see the results being discussed here at this conference, as well as the work from Penn State, only 4 years after I started LDN, to have research results coming in is really exciting, because usually, as we know, these things take years and years. But everybody's kind of got this on fast track because it's already an FDA-approved medication with an established safety record, and people are seeing results. And by the end of this year, they're going to be at the publication stage. So I think we're really on the cusp of not only having verified, published results for the effects of LDN, but I think that the LDN research, it's obvious from what everyone is saying in these abstracts, that it is going to lead to a strong, possibly the conclusive evidence of what is the cause of MS. What is the peptide, what is the receptor, what are the triggers, and we're finally here. I can't believe it's going to happen in my lifetime because I've given up hope. He already has in April. He announced it the first time and released the poster of the results to the annual meeting of the American Academy of Neurology. And then he was at the MS World Congress along with Dr. Zagon from Penn State, and they both discussed their results. So we're finally there. It's the beginning. I'm glad and very gratified to see that the academic research has taken place that will establish it, and once it goes from the abstract stage to publication in something like the New England Journal of Science or of Medicine or the Science magazine or wherever it's going to get published, I think it's going to make a big splash, and especially if they're talking about here's the mechanism of MS, and by the way, LDN positively affects the course of this disease. What we did is, Elaine Moore is an established medical expert who's published 5 or 6 books on different autoimmune disorders and autoimmunity in general. And she invited me to help her with this book and to compile all the research that's out there to date. And the effort behind this book was to have a compendium of everything that's known to date about LDN, and it's published by McFarland Publishing, which is a well-known medical reference publisher. She's a well-known medical author. Her books get put on the shelves of medical research libraries around the world, and now doctors will finally have a reference they can pull off the shelf, and when they want to know what is this LDN I'm hearing about, they'll have all the research, they'll have all the known information, and it covers every disease in which this has been used anecdotally or in research, from cancer to MS, rheumatoid arthritis, autism, all the things that were discussed today at the conference.